Tổ chức xin trân trọng kính mời ông Ernest S LO, Chủ tịch Liên minh IoT Hồng Kông sẽ lên trình bày báo cáo với nội dung triển vọng ứng dụng của Internet vạn vật IoT trên toàn cầu và hiện trạng tại khu vực Đông Nam Á. We honor to invite Mr. Ernest S LO, President, Hong Kong Internet of Things Alliance, to come on stage to share the topic. Welcome.
Members of the Communist Party of Vietnam, Minister of Information and Communications, Minister of Science and Technology, Chairman of Central Economic Commission, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. My pleasure and honor to be here to share some of my experience and insight in basically how to develop the next future economy based on IoT and some future technologies. Okay, so when we talk about IoT, many reports will say that there is going to be like 30 billions of devices by 2020, and then revenue is in terms of trillions. Sounds very promising, huge market. But then very often the public will ask, who is going to pay for these projects? And then ordinary people may ask, how is it related to me? Am I going to be the user only? And the younger generation will ask, how can I make a fortune out of IoT? So hopefully through today's sharing, we are going to get some insights. So let's focus on the ASEAN development of IoT and other related technologies. Well, this diagram is from IoT Business Platform. And we can basically see that all of the countries are working very hard towards defining the IoT strategy. So for example, we can see that Thailand is doing quite well. They are very good at offering some prestigious medical services that people around the globe will basically go to Thailand to basically have, for example, medical checkup and stuff. And we can also see that, for example, in Indonesia, they have basically developed several smart cities. They planned it since many years ago, like 5 to 6 years ago. So for example, Bandung and Jakarta. And then we also see that Philippines has been moving forward to this. Well, in terms of development, maybe they are lagging behind, but in terms of mindsets, Philippines, they are kind of innovative as well. So what can Vietnam do? Well, obviously Vietnam has a lot of advantages. So we are going to see how we can leverage our strengths. Okay, so let's use Malaysia as an example. Well, because in 2015, they basically defined a strategic roadmap for developing IoT. So when we take a look at this, I like this very much because they divide IoT into several components. As you can see, well, it basically contains networking, ICT infrastructure, some hardware stuff, the IoT devices, and some microprocessor controllers, and then some cloud computing stuff and storage. But as you can see, all of these contribute only to a total 20% of IoT components. What about the rest? 80% is about apps, analytics, and services. So this is the big part of IoT indeed. So let's see what they are going to do in Malaysia. We can see, of course, they want to have some economic impact, in terms of the billions. But when you take a look at the employment, I would say the ambition is not high enough. Because they only forecast that, they're going to create this amount of job. These days when we talk about IoT, very often we talk about projects, real estate projects, manufacturing projects, all of these projects, utilities, smart living. So of course, definitely these projects will create some job vacancies. but this is not the most effective way to plan for the next economy. Imagine if we can enable our younger generations or even all of the generations to use IoT to create values, to create their own businesses, that will immediately create a lot of jobs. Instead of just creating jobs through projects, they can basically own their projects, their own projects. In terms of edge, well, intellectual property, well, we see that they targeted, well, like, for example, around 200 patents. Well, I will say, well, creating patents is actually kind of easy, but creating useful, meaningful patents is not easy. So Malaysia further identifies, because they are saying that 80% of IoT components go to applications, analytics, and services. Then what should they do? Well, in this diagram, they have identified 8 areas. I'm not going to talk about each of them in detail, but as you can see, all of these 8 areas are human-centric. They are related to human beings, related to end users. So, I like it very much because I feel like in order to really develop the most impactful economy, the economy needs to be related to us, to citizens. So, no wonder, well, they are also going in this direction as well. Okay, then what about the world? Let's take a look at how the world is approaching IoT. Well, very often, as the previous speakers have mentioned, IoT cannot be separated from other technologies like AI, blockchain, or some other emerging technologies. And very often when we talk about IoT, well, we'll talk about smart cities. Well, because, well, everybody is moving towards the smart cities. So as you can see, well, the Americans, well, basically spend a lot of resources on smart city, connected industry, connected buildings. Well, because after all, everybody spends most of the time inside the building. So definitely, well, smart building will be the most important, one of the most important areas when we talk about smart city projects and IoT. But when we take a look at the APAC in general, well, you can see, well, of course, here we focus on industry. Well, for example, like ASEAN countries, well, we want to have some smart manufacturing industry, etc. But then, what about agriculture? Well, as you can see, well, 1/3 of the IoT projects globally in this area, smart agriculture, belong to APAC. So we need to ask ourselves, should we follow the other people? For example, should we follow the States? Should we follow the Europe to basically develop the same type or same areas of smart city projects? Let's take one example, the connected industry. We are talking about Industry 4.0. But well, when we take a look in more detail, we see the incentives of doing Industry 4.0 is different. It's different from US point of view and the ASEAN countries' point of view. For example, in the States, well, the salary is very high. Then definitely they have strong incentive to basically use technologies to replace some manpower. But what about in ASEAN countries? Our salary is not that high compared to other countries. Are we using the same incentive to basically do Industry 4.0? Maybe not. But why are we still doing that? Well, because by doing Industry 4.0, we can basically do some high precision manufacturing. We can do additive manufacturing. By, for example, using additive manufacturing like 3D printer, we can basically enable a whole ecosystem of startups. So imagine if some startups want to create some IoT products, well, very often they need to go through some testing processes, some pilot projects. There is no way for them to use the traditional manufacturing model to commit to a huge amount of products to be manufactured in order to kickstart a project. In this case, the Industry 4.0 can help them. Using 3D printer, well, the entry barrier is low. They don't really need to spend a lot of money on manufacturing their prototype. So you see, when we talk about even the same name of projects, we need to understand the incentives. The incentives are different, and then the approaches, the long-term strategy will be different. So for most smart city projects, all over the world, very often we focus on traffic, utilities, lighting. As mentioned in the first beginning of my speech, most of them are subsidized or even paid fully by the government. What about the future? After finishing these projects, after creating some temporary job vacancies, what next? Are they going to do any good to the public, to the whole economy in general? Okay, let's take a look at Malaysia as well. Well, they divide that the strategy into short term and long term. Well, infrastructure development is definitely very important, but in terms of short term strategy, well, their goal, in two goals basically. They want to transform the SMEs, for example, digital transformation, to prepare their mindset and maybe some skill sets and infrastructure as well. And they also need to align with existing initiatives. Well, because introducing new technologies to existing initiatives can be very different. Well, but long term, what do they want to do? Well, they want to be the regional development hub for IoT, leveraging open data and other strategic moves. So in this regard, I want to do some sharing. Well, by developing a hub for IoT, what do we mean? Is it really the way we should follow? Well, when take a look at the global development of smart cities, we could see that, well, for example, Korea started that very early, like 2003, and some other countries like China started in 2005, and Europe started in 2011. So, seems like, well, they have been ahead of us for many years, 7 years, 8 years. But what about the impact? Is it really that we will be lagging behind? Are they leading right now? Maybe not. When we are talking about IoT, actually, globally, all the companies are trying to find ways to monetize the technologies. Sometimes when they don't really have some very good ideas, then you will build a platform, right? Well, platform, but then every company has their own platform. As a startup, as a company, which platform I should use? Very difficult. So that means killer applications are still not here. So let's take a look at Europe because I have some personal experience. Well, back in 2010, when I was still in the States at Stanford doing research and development, the Catalonian government from Spain approached me. They asked me to go back to Hong Kong because I was born in Hong Kong. They asked me to go back to Hong Kong to establish an R&D center for them, working on smart city projects and technologies. So this is Hong Kong. So this R&D institution is a prestigious one in Europe. So they are working on many leading projects, no matter it is the infrastructure of ICT or even some space projects. They are very strong in terms of technologies, in terms of the communication infrastructure. You can see the optical communication, signal processing, access technologies. So they spent a lot of resources and they managed to get prestigious projects and funding from the EU. But is this enough to basically help them take a leading role in terms of smart city technologies? So when I first established the R&D Center for them, in Hong Kong, first of all, the immediate thing I did was to establish a smart city group. Because I saw that they were really focused on the underlying infrastructure and technologies. But we needed to focus on some applications. Because if you want to make the most impact, it needs to be driven by applications. The applications need to be used by end users. So that's why, well, I've initiated the Smart City Group. And then in the subsequent years, we managed to initiate some other projects like smart agriculture in Hong Kong, and then some innovative emerging technologies called Wi-Fi. We managed to get some traction. Well, we spent like 1 year to develop the Wi-Fi technology, and then we got inquiries from, for example, Middle East. They wanted to apply our technologies to 200 shopping malls. Disney Group wanted to buy the technology, and then some university from mainland China wanted to license our technologies. But then we encountered one serious problem. When we wanted to commercialize our technologies, we found that it needs to take a lot of resources. The complexity and the resources required is exponentially increasing. Why I'm sharing this is because when we are talking about developing an IoT hub, you can foresee that in the coming years, if we focus only on technologies, the underlying infrastructure, it is going to cost us a lot in terms of money and resources, and leading us maybe to nowhere if we don't have enough resources. So, what can we do? Let's take a look at why IoT gained traction from the past years. Because, this is my first person experience, so I will share a little bit. Well, when I was still running the R&D center for Catalonia, basically, we see that it's very difficult to commercialize things because the ecosystem is too small. We need to spend a lot of R&D resources on simply coming up with the communication protocols. But these days, everybody is using protocols as nobody. You don't really need to know the detail. So we see that in order to have the most impact, technology is not the most important thing, but we need to build the ecosystem. So we see that, with iPhone, when iPhone supported Bluetooth 4.0, we started to see a lot of wearables applications. Then the public, the end users started to get familiarized with this IoT concept. They no longer feel like IoT is far from them. They feel like it is part of their daily life. And then at the same time, some hardware manufacturers managed to come up with some very good hardware so that most of the developers can utilize them simply right away. They don't really need to understand the underlying principles and stuff. They just use the modules. So for example, Nordic, and then even Raspberry Pi or Arduino, and then later some cloud platform. And at the same time, in terms of sensor development, some companies develop some low-cost, low-power sensors. So by all of these, suddenly, the public or some ordinary developers gain access to develop applications in a very short time at very low cost. And then IoT gained traction. So, developer community group, and then the end user community group. Back in Silicon Valley, when I was doing R&D, where there are many startups, very often when we talk about technology development, we don't talk about technology, but we talk about innovation. When we talk about innovation, we talk about one mindset called design thinking. So innovation, first of all, idea is cheap. Everyone can have creative idea, but what separates idea people and great entrepreneurs is the execution. So how to turn idea into innovation? Well, very often we'll take a look at three constraints: desirability, viability, and feasibility. Well, very often we focus on feasibility, that is the technical part, whether it is technical sound, whether we can develop that, or the viability, whether we have the money to do that. Well, these are definitely very important, but it's the desirability that makes the big difference. It needs to be desired by not just end users, but every stakeholders. So that's why we talk a lot about human-centric innovation. And when we evaluate our innovation, no matter it is a product or it is a strategy, we check against all these three constraints. But sometimes even we cannot fulfill them. We don't really need to give up. Collaboration can help us achieve them. So when we encounter some barriers, instead of giving it up, we can think about collaboration. So now, these days, as you can see, we have further development of some enabling technologies, for example, in terms of connectivity. For IoT, like LoRa and Sigfox, by the way, they are developed by private companies in France. And then, we can also see some other emerging technologies like blockchain. Then we know that we are ready, because these days, utilizing these tools is not difficult. Then we can see that, the developer community is coming. So I guess now we can focus on applications. Just like what Malaysia is talking about, 80% of IoT components goes to applications, analytics and stuff. So here is one example. Well, it's in China. How do we leverage regional needs to design our strategy? In China, right now, they are utilizing a lot of facial recognition technologies. Because of time, that we're not going to watch the full video. But what I want to say is, well, with that kind of technologies, well, let's talk about retail. Well, in ordinary form of retail, well, maybe, well, there are some salespersons. But now with this kind of technology, of course, it is a manned operation. Maybe there are no longer salespersons. But then the salespersons can actually become the owner. They can create their own retail business easily with this kind of technology. So it's like technology is replacing some people, but at the same time, they're enabling human beings to start something new, something more valuable. Then what about this? Again, in China, they're utilizing facial recognition. So the policemen are wearing some smart glasses and then trying to identify the criminals and stuff. Okay, so we're not going to watch a full video of that again. So, if you still remember, Google Glasses was once very popular in the sense that people felt like it is cool stuff. But now Google drops that project. Why? Because of the desirability. Well, they cannot figure out who is going to use it. But what about in China? When they talk about the national security, then they have strong incentive to use smart glasses. So we really need to take a look at our own culture, the local needs, in order to basically develop the strategy. So we can basically leverage other stuff to develop our strategy. For example, there is a global paradigm shift. Well, right now, insurance companies are leveraging wearables to basically come up with some adaptive insurance policies. So if you maintain a healthy lifestyle, then maybe your insurance premium will be lower. Then there's another paradigm shift called circular economy. It is going to happen because 3 years ago, the EU already mentioned that they were in transition to this circular economy. In simple words, what is a circular economy? Right now, we are buying all kinds of products, but in the future, we are not buying, we are subscribing. These days, we are talking about software as a service, but in the future, we are talking about hardware as a service. And this is made possible only by IoT. Without sensors, without low-cost infrastructure, there is no way for us to do some preventive measure, to do some predictive maintenance. But thanks to IoT and AI, we can start to basically transit to circular economy. So when we talk about Industry 4.0, because now we can build things from scratch, then we need to take this into consideration. We need to prepare our factory to be ready to welcome the circular economy. Actually, we can also use IoT to do some social good. Well, very often when we are talking about doing social good, we feel like we need to pour a lot of money. It cannot justify the ROI. It needs to be paid by the government. Maybe not. We will see what we are focusing on. So this company is initiated by my friend in UK. She is not a tech person, but she has a passion to help people. So as you can see, for disabled person with this kind of technology utilizing sensors to sense the muscles and stuff, we can basically help transform a disabled person into a normal person. From that, we can extract a lot of values from disabled persons who once upon a time we felt like, well, they were burden of the society. But with technology, they are no longer burdens of society. So, because of time, I'm not going to share all the details. I guess you guys have the slides. We need to stress it again. Well, we need to focus on desirability and stakeholders. We need to check the values of our stakeholders. Even in agriculture, when we are talking about, well, improving the productivity, maybe that is not the case. We had a smartphone project in mainland China in Guizhou. We found that, well, the pain point is not the productivity and stuff. The pain point is risk. The farmers cannot bear risk. So we use technologies, also IoT, to basically help farmers reduce the risk by introducing other parties into the ecosystem. And of course, there are some future technologies that, well, I guess IoT can partner with. Well, blockchain, machine learning, definitely we need to go. But building information modeling are very popular. Well, when we are talking about new infrastructure, BIM, we need to take a look at that because that is the future of our smart buildings. And of course, we need to basically have a public-private partnership or even four-piece public-private people partnership. Well, they need to share data and some knowledge as well. Well, there are many challenges. Well, maybe in the next panel discussion we are going to cover that. Finally, pay attention to some other emerging technologies. For example, this one, ordinary glass? No, this glass can harvest energy. So imagine in the future buildings, all the glasses can get energy from outside to power up your devices. And brainwave as well. Right now, these days, people are talking about utilizing sensors to sense your brainwave so that they know what you are thinking about, and then they know what you are going to make decisions. So these technologies are going to be very disruptive. Thank you very much.